Hey sailors, I received an interesting request from another Flying Scot racer. What do I do if my skipper falls overboard? Now, this could certainly be the start of a very funny joke with a lot of potentially hilarious responses, especially if the crew and skipper are married. But this scenario can be a scary proposition and might be scary enough to deter someone from sailing or sailing in heavy air, so we certainly don't want that. It's an interesting question, especially if the crew has a little tiller experience. Okay, although unlikely, I suppose crazy things can happen and we should be prepared. But what would actually happen if the skipper falls out of the boat and the boat keeps sailing and the only one remaining in the boat doesn't know how to sail the boat or doesn't know how to sail the boat well? That's actually an interesting question. So why don't we try it and find out? The first thing that comes to mind is when in doubt, let out. First thing we're going to do is release any sheet from any cleat, including the main sheet, both jib sheets, and both spinnaker sheets. If the spinnaker is flying, we're also going to release the spinnaker halyard so that it drops. I'm thinking we should probably stay as close to the person in the water as possible. So I recommend that we stop the boat. We're going to do that by turning the tiller away from the wind until the bow is dead into the wind, but only after we release the sheets and spinnaker halyard. If you stay calm and do these things quickly, we will have avoided capsizing, and it should only be a short swim for the skipper to get to the boat. If the spinnaker is not already inside the boat, make it so while working to keep the bow pointed into the wind. In our first test case, Rick intentionally doesn't follow the recommendations, and instead of dropping the spinnaker halyard and turning the boat into the wind, he starts trying to take down the spinnaker as he normally might. By the time he gets it down and all sorted out, the skipper ends up far, far away from the boat, and this could be problematic if the crew doesn't know how to sail or doesn't know how to sail single-handed. If there is any prospect of the crew running over the skipper, I highly recommend the skipper swim to the boat instead of the crew sailing to the skipper. In the second test case, Rick follows most of the directions, but doesn't get the spinnaker pulled in. Although the halyard was released, the spinnaker is catching enough wind and pulling the bow down away from the wind, so he's getting blown away from the person in the water. In the third test, we pretty much have it down, but Rick is pretending he doesn't know how to sail, so he's not trimming in on the mainsail to turn the boat into the wind and doesn't have enough water flow over the tiller to get the boat to turn up into the wind. Even so, the skipper should be able to swim to the boat. Skippers, you should always be nice to your crew. And crew, no matter how tempting it may be to run over your skipper and make it look like an accident, please refrain from doing so. When the skipper swims back to the boat, the next step is to get the skipper back inside the boat. That is not always easy when the skipper is tired after a brisk swim in cold water. That is why I highly recommend to all my Flying Scot sailor friends to purchase the swim ladder and grab rail from Flying Scot Inc. I promise, Carrie, Tyler, Melanie are going to take great care of you, and I guarantee when that time comes and you're trying to get back in the boat, you will agree with me that purchasing this ladder and handrail is the best $230 you've ever spent. If it's a struggle to get the skipper back in the boat, and it often is, consider tying the bow line under the arms of the person in the water for added leverage. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Before I sign off, please wear a life jacket. According to SafeBoatingCampaign.com, 75% of boating deaths are due to drowning. 85% of victims were not wearing a life jacket, and 2/3 of drowning victims are good swimmers. Also, spend the extra 20 seconds to adjust the straps and make sure it fits snug so it doesn't ride up on you when you're in the water. Seriously, it's just 20 more seconds, and you're going to wish you had if you hadn't. Last but not least, I wear these bright shirts to remind everyone to come to the Glow in the Dark Regatta at Clinton Lake in Illinois. If you like one design racing against 40 to 50 boats, we'd love to see you there. You can find the Glow in the Dark Regatta on the Flying Scot Sailing Association events calendar at fssa.com.